Hello and welcome to the Car Care Nut channel. In today's video we're going to be installing a trailer harness on a 2021 Toyota Sienna. I'll share with you some tips, I'll show you how the process is done and everything in between. But before we get started, if you're new to the channel, welcome. Consider subscribing to the channel, check out some of my other videos. If you are a returning subscriber, well, thank you so much for watching another one of my videos. Without further ado, let's get right into it. So here's the kit for the wiring harness for the Sienna. Now, one thing I will say about this Sienna, the trailer hitch wiring harness is kind of an odd dealio, because usually you'll have one part, one box that contains all the components of the kit. But for some reason, the Sienna has two boxes. One of them is the actual wire harness and one of them is a converter. Usually that converter is not installed in the car. Some of its wiring harness will already be there. Really old models will you'll have to run all kinds of wires to the front because the converter used to be in the front. But the newer models are becoming smarter, easier to install, where the converter part is in the back. Some models you have to go into the brake lights and whatnot. Some you don't, so I'm just giving you this information for all other models if you're following. But they're all pretty much the same. Some of them come with instructions, some of them don't. You really don't need instruction for most of them. They're super simple. But let's take these apart and see what do we have with this kit. So this is the converter. And all it is just a good old box, basically a computer that controls everything for the trailer. It's very clearly marked and it has a little wire. All this is going to do, this is going to connect to the car, connect to the wiring harness of the car on one side, and then to the trailer wire on the other. It just has an owner's manual and some nuts to connect it to the body. And here's the other one. This is the actual trailer. Here are instructions. The actual trailer harness. Another thing I will say about this is very small and it is not extremely complicated to install on this Sienna. On some models you have to tear the whole back apart, but because the Sienna has a spare tire where it is, it makes it actually a little bit easier. So on these trailer harnesses, you're gonna wanna notice one thing. Every time you see a plug like this, I hope you can see it well on camera, right there. This is an inside to outside rubber plug. So this is where the wire is going to go outside the van, and this will seal the hole. Usually they'll have some dummy plug that just closes that hole. You take it out, put this in, and then this is the outside part. They will all have this in one shape or form. All of them will have different designs, but they're all pretty much the same thing. You're just trying to route it so it doesn't get pinched and whatnot. Whenever you install any electrical wires, most of them are self-explanatory, but some of them are not. You always want to make sure you run your wires where it's safe, where there are other wires, or if you're running it somewhere else, you always want to make sure there's no heat, there's no friction, there's no sharp edges. You cannot have this wire break and then cause other issues. That's how usually this turns into a disaster. Having said that, let's go start working on the van and start installing this. So let's start at the back. Let's open the back door. All right, so let's remove the spare tire cover. It's pretty nice that they put this right here on the Sienna. We're gonna have to take these bolts because we got to remove the spare tire as well. So one thing before we continue, this is actually held up by 3 lug nuts. The owner of this car actually told me, standing behind the camera, he told me he's never taken the spare tire out. So if you own a Sienna, 3 lug nuts, just 21 millimeter, you can use the spare tire tool to take it out. And it's basically mounts just like a tire, it has 3 studs. So here's a spare tire. I think this is a brilliant design, depends who you ask. I think it's a great place for it, better than underneath the van, and it's kind of a pain to get it out like the previous models, but here's your spare tire if you have one, because this was an option. So now we're gonna start the installation. All our installation is here, so I'm gonna bring you guys up close. I just wanted to show you the general area where things are. Bring you guys close so we can start installing this thing. So, these are the 2 studs where the converter is gonna sit, and here's the opening in the body where the harness is gonna go outside. And here's that connector that the converter is going to connect to. So let me set the converter in, tighten it, run the wire outside the van, and then we'll connect this, and then we'll move underneath the van. Converter right here. That comes with two 10mm nuts. That is included in the package. Folks, usually these kits, everything you need is included. At least the original one from Toyota. Let's remove the body plug. We're going to take this one out and discard it. That's no longer being used. I'm going to set this through. This is very important that you make sure that this is seated properly, because this could cause a water leak. Just like so, that it sits nice and flush. Here's our wire, and typically I want you to see this. What Toyota will do is, wires that are not used, they will tape it to the side. That's how the original harnesses come from the factory. Actually, in reality, all connectors will come like this, or at least most of them, the auxiliary ones, and then depends on the car's option at the factory, they'll rip the tape out or not. So this one, you see it's taped, and I don't want to say this is a standard, but usually white tape is optional stuff. Not always the case, depends on the factory that makes the harness, but for the most part, white tape is auxiliary stuff or options. Black tape is primary stuff. So we're gonna just peel off the tape and connect it. That's because we are car care nuts. Let's remove the original tape. This is very common that you see on the original harness. This tape is still there because of the factory. They don't want to create the waste, and this tape really doesn't do anything, but we don't mind the waste here. Car care nuts. Now we are done here. Let's put our spare tire back. We'll assemble the inside because we have nothing else on the inside. All right, so that's all tightened. Never over tighten these. There's no really need for a torque spec, but just don't over tighten them because this stud goes into aluminum and you don't want to strip it. Let's put the world's flimsiest cover on. It's very flimsy, so be patient when you install this guy. Start the bottom first. Get the seat belt out of the way. This is a total afterthought. Just by looking at how flimsy it is and how just looks like an afterthought. They didn't think of this when they designed the van. The last minute, like, oops, and the spare tire, and they just put it here. Works great. I think it's a good spot, better than underneath the van. Having said that, let's go underneath the van and finish the install. So now, in order to get to the wires at the bottom, we need to remove this panel. So let's go ahead and do that. There's your wire right there. So now we're gonna get our harness. Let's connect it to here. I'm just gonna route the wire because this thing is aftermarket, and the original one is ridiculous. And honestly, it's just a chunk of metal, connects to the same spots, so nothing I'm worried about. But let's run this, and unfortunately, we're gonna have to use zip ties in this case because these clips where this thing would connect to the original one, the holes are not there, or it's not designed the same way. So we're gonna have to improvise a little bit. So I consulted with the owner, and they wanted the wire right around here at the top. Another option was gonna be at the bottom. The bottom, this might scrape as the car, you back into a curb or something. So I think the top is better. So we're gonna go right ahead, just test fit our connector right here, and I think if we find a few spots to zip tie this guy, we're gonna be good. Now the zip ties I'm gonna use are white in color. Black would be ideal, but I ran out of black ones, so I'm gonna secure it for now, and then later on off camera we'll go get some black zip ties and secure them. Just want to give you the idea and secure this so we can drive the van. And that is pretty much it. It's not the best install, of course, because we're working with an aftermarket part here, but we did the best that we can, and now the car has a trailer harness. Let's install our cover back, and then we're all set. All right, folks, so that's all done. Not the prettiest job in the world because of the hitch being aftermarket, but it'll do, it'll be safe, and the main thing is the electrical part is what's important. Here are my thoughts on this if you're doing this yourself, whether on this van or anything else. I would still get an aftermarket hitch because it's just a big blob of metal that connects to the same points usually that the original one does. All you want it to connect to is the frame of the unibody, not really the soft metals, the cosmetic stuff. And the harness, I would get original, and here's why. The original harness is designed for the car. It plugs and plays in most cases. Sometimes you'll have to run some wires around, but for the most part, it is plug and play. And the main thing is, it does not void your warranty. Avoid aftermarket ones that are questionable, that does not connect to the original point, or absolutely avoid just running wires from the brake light, turn signal, tail lights directly and put a little fuse. Remember, your car is okay, but the trailer never is. So make sure you use a converter, and all that little converter is a series of relays that isolates your car signal, like the brake light signal, the turn signal, and the tail lights, from the trailer. If the trailer has a malfunction, a fuse will pop and you're safe, your car is safe. That's why this is very important that you use some kind of an isolation device like the converter that we installed in this van. Well, I hope this video was helpful and informative. I hope you learned something new. If you like this video, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. And until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.